Code Veronica is a perplexing entry in the Resident Evil franchise. There are moments that feel like the best in the series, and moments that feel like the worst. For every step it takes forward, it takes 2 steps back. The recent remakes of RE2 and 3 I don't think are as good as the original, and RE4 I think there is a fair argument for both sides on which version is better. But I completely believe that there is a potential version of Code Veronica that can far surpass the original, and that is why I think Code Veronica is a perfect candidate for a remake. Today we're going to go through my thoughts on the major elements of Code Veronica, which will be packaged along with what I think should be preserved or changed in a remake. Leaks and rumors have been heating up about this remake being in development, so hopefully in a couple years we'll be able to look back at this video and see what Capcom delivered on. And yes, there will be spoilers. As I'm sure you already know, Code Veronica stars Claire and Chris Redfield, with us starting out as Claire on Rockford Island, eventually making it to Antarctica, and then we switch to Chris and go through those same locations. The best thing Code Veronica has to offer is without a doubt the story. Exploring Rockford Island and finding breadcrumbs about the creepy Ashford twins is great. Crossing paths with the eccentric Alfred Ashford and the legendary Albert Wesker had me so interested and excited to see what lies ahead. We get a glimpse of Alexia Ashford, and then soon after get the wild plot twist that the Alexia we thought we saw was actually her brother Alfred cross-dressing as her. Yeah, there's something super weird and creepy about that, but I play Resident Evil for weird and creepy shit, so I was all about this. This side of Alfred is also made believable after we read notes from him, giving us a glimpse of how much of a freak he is and his weird obsession with his sister. And even him having that layer of his character is believable when you look at who he is. Him and Alexia are brought into this world by some sort of cloning process that used the DNA of their ancestor Veronica Ashford and their father Alexander Ashford. However that cloning process works, it appears Alexia got all of the good genes from Veronica, and Alfred is more or less a clone of his father, who is said to be a disgrace to the Ashford name, which leaves Alfred living in the shadow of his diabolical genius sister. On top of that, he was thrusted into adulthood after Alexia experimented on and imprisoned their father, before putting herself into the hyperbolic time chamber for 15 years. Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for a fucked up cross-dressing man-child if you ask me. Alfred brings that over-the-top wackiness that is applauded in RE4 with the likes of Ramon Salazar, but it's not as celebrated in Code Veronica. If you keep his character the same and maybe tone down the voice acting a bit, I think Alfred could land as a great villain. Alexia, on the other hand, I think is perfect. She's such an evil, self-important creation that has the most villainous plot in Resident Evil history. Alexia is trying to use the T Veronica virus to turn herself into a queen ant and turn the rest of humanity into her ant servants, which she sees as the right path for humanity. I mean, that is incredible. She is a fucking lunatic. I love it. We learn these details by reading notes throughout the game, and I have to say, this game has the best lore and notes in the entire franchise. Piecing it together through notes that this creature is called Nosferatu and that it's actually the twins' father felt so rewarding and is a perfect example of how to use notes effectively in a video game. The developers knocked it out of the park with that aspect of the game, and I pray it is preserved in a future remake. Something that I think the story can lean further into in a remake is the brother-sister dynamic. I'm sure its subtlety is appreciated by many, but not until late in the game did it cross my mind that the Ashford twins are a stark contrast of the brother-sister dynamic between Chris and Claire. Alfred has an unhealthy obsession with his sister Alexia, while Alexia shows some care for her brother but really thinks he's worthless. Versus Chris and Claire, who have a beautiful relationship. They both travel across the planet headfirst into nightmare scenarios in pursuit of each other. I loved this short cutscene of Chris hauling ass through zombies to get Claire out of Wesker's clutches. Chris's determination to save his sister is only matched by Claire's determination to find her brother. It is beautiful, and while it's certainly there, I think it can be leaned on a tad more in a remake. This would be extremely easy to pull off with a modern game in a situation like this, where Chris finally finds Claire imprisoned by Goop after searching all over, and all we get is this text dialogue. I know people love that lack of voice acting in the original games, but this moment could hit so much harder emotionally with a convincing voice performance. While the story is by far my favorite element of Code Veronica, there is a slice of the story that is ironically my least favorite part of the game. That, of course, is Steve Burnside. I had heard time and time again that people hated Steve, and I was so ready to be a contrarian and show love for Steve, but all it took was for him to open his mouth literally once, and I was like, yeah, this guy sucks.
Sorry about that little misunderstanding.
The voice acting performance is obviously dreadful, but the worst part is that there is a compelling storyline with Steve that is completely diminished by the writing. And the voice acting, yeah.
I said I was sorry.
He quickly makes it blatantly obvious that he has experienced some trauma with his family dynamic, but in a way that is far too on the nose.
He won't come. You'll just end up disappointed if you rely on others. Believe me, I know.
What was that all about?
This culminates pretty early on with the scene of him killing his zombie father. If you read that on paper, you have potential for one of the most emotional scenes in the franchise. But instead, it just fell completely flat for me, thanks to the way that it was poorly set up and Steve's voice acting.
Father!
Again, there is a great theme of family in this game that can land so much better if done right. Steve's character is just poorly handled all around. He has this arc set up that he wants to be a hero to Claire, but every time he has a heroic moment, it is diminished by his response.
Oh yeah, that felt good. Don't worry, Claire. Your knight in shining armor is here.
He even dies in vain, with his last words being that he wasn't able to keep his promise to save Claire. Can we let Steve have his moment? Maybe have him cut into the Nosferatu boss fight to save Claire instead of hanging there worthlessly? Give him something that actually makes me sad when he dies. I think it's okay to have a tragic character, but Steve is an irredeemable character. He's an off-putting creep who tries to kiss Claire while she's asleep. He talks like a literal baby.
I said I was sorry.
And literally risks it all just to get a look at Claire's ass. What are we doing?
Steve, watch out!
And actually his last words were him telling Claire that he loves her, which just had me rolling my eyes.
I love you, Claire.
There is a potential version of Steve who is a compelling character with an interesting arc. I think most people would agree that's what we need most in a remake.
I swear I'll protect you next time, Claire.
The setting of the game is what it is, but I think can have new life brought to it in a remake. The early portion of the game in the prison and military facility I did not find overly interesting, but the Ashford mansion I liked and the private quarters I loved. Seeing where Alfred and Alexia grew up was fascinating. Having dolls all around is always creepy, and this carousel room above their bedrooms was uniquely creepy, along with the incredible music that plays. The music in this game overall I thought was spectacular, and it also delivers one of the best save room themes in the franchise, if not the best. When you walk up to the twins' private quarters for the first time, it looks like Dracula's castle up on a hill. And the inside definitely looks like you're in a vampire house with the look of the doors and bats flying around. Wait, who let Quentin Tarantino direct this scene? There is a decent amount of vampire influence on this game, with the private quarters we just looked at, the monster version of the twins' father being called Nosferatu, the whole creepy family lineage aspect to the Ashfords, and with their research trying to resurrect their ancestor Veronica to be like a vampire, essentially. I love the little vampire flavor in this game without completely taking over the zombie aspect of Resident Evil. I think in a remake they could leave it how it is, or maybe lean a little bit further into it to make the title stand out even more amongst the franchise. The Antarctica section is basically the same for me as the other half of the game, where I did not find it overly interesting until we stumbled upon the areas that had Ashford fingerprints all over them and that call back to the Spencer Mansion in RE1. There is a lot of room to make the Antarctica section awesome in a remake by using the snow, ice, and your cold breath more effectively from a horror standpoint. As for the gameplay of the game, there is again good and bad. I like the addition of the akimbo pistols that you can split your aim with or focus both guns on one enemy depending on the situation, and spraying akimbo SMGs was a blast as well. The new version of the fixed camera is interesting, with there now being dynamic changes of camera angles instead of it always being hard cuts like in the previous games. I prefer the old way overall, but I really like how they use the camera in Code Veronica to set up scares, such as the camera moving in on this body bag, which is then empty when we come back to that room, the camera focusing on this body hanging down that of course drops to the ground and comes after us after we grab an item, and best of all is the camera dipping to this cutout in the wall, which is a fake out several times until one of the Stretch Armstrong tyrants finally stretches his way up in that cutout. There is a good mix of scares in this game. Ending this cutscene and then having a creepy doll staring at us made me jump. There is some nice setup of feeling like you're being watched or that something is lurking, and this Iron Maiden scare is up there with my favorites in the franchise. A lot of my issues with the gameplay would be easy fixes in a remake. The Stretch Armstrongs hitting you from off-screen drove me nuts, but would not be as annoying with the dodge mechanic or parry mechanic. The bats that you seemingly cannot shoot and the moths that you seemingly cannot shoot unless they rest on a wall would be easily fixed with modern aiming. The explosive bow ammo is a nice addition in this game, but the standard bowgun ammo is insanely worthless. And it was funny, I was expecting the 3-bow spread projectile like we saw in RE2, especially with how much ammo they give you for this thing, but that was certainly not the case. This thing sucks. The shotgun was also perplexing to me, either decimating zombies in one shot or looking like it was shooting peanuts. Those weapons would obviously function entirely different in a remake, which will be nice. I gotta show respect to the enhanced Glock though, as getting triple kills on zombies was incredibly satisfying. The inevitable redesign of the bosses will also go a long way. I love the Nosferatu boss even though I was an idiot and did not bring enough supplies to the fight, nor did I grab the sniper rifle, which left me fearing I had soft-locked myself. But that's on me for not heeding the warning of the game asking, are you sure you want to go forward? I also like the worm boss and loved how Chris's section of the game starts off with the worm swallowing Rodrigo pretty much immediately. I also made a big deal about how much I loved Gravedigger in RE3. I guess I really just like worms. And the Alexia boss fights I enjoyed, despite some frustrating game design. That game design being me not realizing that Alexia would kill me immediately if I walked too close to her in the first fight, and not realizing that I needed to shoot her within 2 seconds of the second fight or she kills Claire. There are a couple bosses that are optional, although the game does not make it apparent that they're optional. This would be the Albinoid electrocuting the water and the Black Widow. These being optional I think is fine, but could be more fun in a remake where you actually have to fight them. The Tyrant bosses I thought were terrible. First off, the appearance of the Tyrant is awful. There are middle schoolers out there who doodle more interesting designs in their notebook. I'm sure there's some excuse out there with the graphics on the Dreamcast or this being brought to the PS2, but this Tyrant design feels like a major downgrade from those that we already saw in the franchise at this point. The first fight against the Tyrant is a joke, he didn't even reach me by the time I took him down, and the second fight on the plane is cool in concept but was a pain in the ass. You're locked into close quarters where I had a really tough time dodging his attacks, and it just proved to be a frustrating fight for me. And even with the Alexia fights that I liked, we could get way better boss designs in a remake. The first fight she looks like Emma Frost, which I didn't love, and it makes this wet sound when she throws what looks like blood out that turns into fire, which I couldn't help but laugh at. It kept reminding me of a Tim and Eric skit. And then we have the second fight in her final form, which I do think looks pretty sick with the Queen and transformation, but this could look and play way better in a remake, and I think would be a top tier Resident Evil boss if done right. The current version is brutal with her babies swarming at us while she also attacks, and the sniper finale was brutal as well. I was about to be so mad if I died on this part. But of course, the worst of all is the infected version of our dear friend Steve. What on earth were they thinking with this sequence? We just have to run away, so it's not really a boss battle, but I've never had a harder time running away from anything in my entire life. I could not tell you how many times I tried this. And matters are made worse with you having to go back to the autosave where you resume playing as Claire. That same Claire that barely brought enough supplies to beat Nosferatu with, so I needed to heal up, go through the item box to grab what I can, go through this hallway of tentacles, and smash this ball over and over again. Just to attempt to run from Steve for 2 seconds before he killed me for the 10th time. Me not bringing the best gear to the Nosferatu fight also meant that I did not have the shotgun or grenade launcher to stun Steve. I ended up giving in and looking up a YouTube video of how you need to run at him to dodge his attacks, and I still barely made it out. As if Steve wasn't bad enough as it is, this was just a sick joke that was the cherry on top. I digress, let's talk about some puzzles. The puzzles in Code Veronica were decent, but I thought were a downgrade from RE3. I loved the Ashford lineage puzzle where you need to select the portraits in the right order from Veronica to the current head of the Ashford family in Alfred. I also like the paperweight puzzle with the clue being that the twins are 2 sides of a coin, so you have to enter the symbol from the opposite side of the cube. After seeing how they turned the RE2 chess piece puzzle from a nothing puzzle into one of the best puzzles in the franchise, I have confidence that the puzzles in a remake of Code Veronica would be a major improvement. The biggest issue with the overall gameplay experience of Code Veronica is the runtime. There is a lot of backtracking, which is normal for Resident Evil, but it wears on you when the game is longer than the previous games, and when you have to go back through the same areas as Chris after going through them as Claire. Chris does access some different rooms and areas, so it's not all bad, but they could definitely trim some backtracking out of this game. I mean, we run around for a while trying to get to a security camera so we can zoom in and read the code on a painting, but I could see the code clear as day without the security camera. There are areas where the item box and typewriter are not in the same room, which I thought was cool at first, but in the last area of the game, I'm doing all this extra running around when I was just ready to wrap this thing up. That annoyance of the game dragging really wore on me down the stretch. I was mentally preparing to roll credits, but then I gotta restart the Alexia fights for reasons I didn't realize, and I'm spending an hour staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning trying to escape the guy who can't escape his own daddy issues. I'm so triggered by Zombie Steve, I honestly don't care if they rework this sequence, turn it into a cutscene, or remove it altogether. Just please, Capcom, don't make me do it again. I can't do it again. Overall, I think Code Veronica is a good game that could have been great, which tells me that a second crack at this title could easily catapult it into greatness. I think if they trim some of that backtracking fat, there will be room for them to expand other elements while keeping a modest runtime. Dive further into those themes of family dynamics in the game. Maybe lean further into those vampire elements to make this story an even more unique title in the franchise. And tell me more about my man Rodrigo. I want to know more about this guy. And no, it's not because he got swallowed by a worm. As you can tell, I am pro-remake. I know there are people out there who would rather have a developer work on new entries instead of remakes, which I think is fair, but Capcom in particular I think has been doing it right by alternating new releases and remakes, with those new entries still coming out in a respectable cadence by today's standards. Some people also clamor for a new spin-off or a Revelations 3 instead of a remake. Hey, I wouldn't mind seeing a Revelations 3, I enjoyed the first two, but do we even know what we're asking for? The first Revelations game was originally a 3DS game, and Revelations 2 was largely a co-op game. Revelations 3 could be a free-to-play extraction shooter for all we know. The hit ratio with recent RE spin-offs is not great, while the remake hit ratio is really good. I find the floor and ceiling of a Resident Evil remake to be way higher than that of a spin-off. You may get an original story in a spin-off, but that story could also be utter garbage. Let me know your thoughts on Code Veronica down in the comments. How do you feel about the original game? Are you as excited as I am for a potential remake? Do you think there's anything redeemable about Steve Burnside? There's not. Please like the video if you think I deserve it, and consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future Resident Evil videos leading up to RE9. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.
I said I was sorry.